Hi everybody, I wanted to introduce my daughter finally and make this birthing video about how the birth went. Yeah, I'm so happy to be taping again. I made a few videos yesterday and I was like, I have to introduce her. She's sleeping right now, so as soon as she wakes up I will show her, but she's sleeping right next to me, so I set up my nicer camera instead of my phone so it's not moving and I have both hands. So I'm just sitting on the floor in her nursery and she's right here sleeping, probably gonna wake up soon. So anyways, I did want to share my birth with everybody. I was 8 days overdue and I had her Saturday, September 3rd at 10:02 p.m. And so yeah, let's get right into the birthing story. So on Friday, the day before she was due, I felt really good and I was doing normal activities. I took my daughter to get her hair cut. My 3-year-old, I dropped my sons off at school, and then yeah, I took her to her haircut. We went to Ulta. I got a lip gloss. I got my sister her birthday present, and I felt pretty good. And I didn't think I was going to be going into labor even the next day at all. So yeah, so I just kind of put labor out of my mind as much as I could and tried to relax. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure there's no glare in here because there's a lot of bright light. Okay. So yeah, and then we went to my mother-in-law's for dinner, and yeah, we just kind of had a relaxing Friday. I went to the chiropractor with both kids, half the kids, so yeah, so I did that, and then we went to bed, and about 3, it was probably like 1 in the morning. Sometimes I thought it was like her moving, because I would feel, it felt like kind of like a pull, and yeah, and I got that a lot, and I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, is it contractions? I thought that throughout my pregnancy, but a lot of it was just her moving. So I felt kind of a similar feeling to that Friday early in the morning, well, Saturday, probably 1 in the morning. That same pulling feeling. I think she's waking up. Anyway, so I noticed that they were getting, by 3 o'clock, they were consistent, and I know that's contractions if they're consistent, and then it turned more into a uniform contraction, so more of kind of like the pulling. So anyway, so I was really excited. So what I did is I uploaded on my phone the contraction timer, and I started timing it, and they were about 15 minutes, 16, 10, and they weren't closer than 10 minutes apart usually. So yeah, I was timing them, but I was like, you know what, I'm not sure if this labor is going to progress all day or if it's just the beginning and it's going to be a long labor. So what I did is I went back to sleep as much as I could, even if I was waking up every 15 minutes and just pressing the timer. And then by that time I noticed my husband, he woke up around 6 in the morning because he noticed like my phone because of the light and stuff, and he's like, what's going on? And I told him that I was having contractions, but they were irregular and they weren't strong, so I'm just gonna go back to sleep. He asked if we should call my mother-in-law, and I said no, definitely not yet, because they're just little contractions, so I don't want to get everyone excited if I don't know if it's gonna continue. So anyways, he did end up waking up at like 7. I could hear him downstairs doing stuff, and it was Saturday, so I'm like, he's up early because he probably thinks I'm like going into full labor. But I slept until 8, and by the time I went downstairs I was like, okay, I need to get up now. And the contractions, if I looked, they were continuing, but they weren't like 10 10 10. They were like 10 15 12 17, so they were very regular. So I go downstairs and all the kids are awake, and my son, my oldest son, was like, we're gonna have a baby today. And I was like, I don't know, son, I'm not sure. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up. So the kids, actually, we had a birthday party. My nephew's 8th birthday party was that day. So what we decided to do is have my mother-in-law, she worked in the morning, so she came early around 1 off work and decided to take the kids to the birthday so that we could stay home if I was going into labor. So when I came downstairs, and a lot of moms, I've heard this before, when I came downstairs and was with my kids, my labor stalled even more, meaning it got more far apart. The contractions didn't seem any more powerful. They kind of like weaned off for a few hours when the kids were here. And I was like, why is that? Like, I got up and now they're stopping. What's going on? So, yeah, they were like 30 minutes, 15, 35. So I was kind of like, oh no, labor's stalling. So I called my birthing coach, or I texted her, and she told me just to relax and, you know, wait for it to happen. I didn't call my midwife. So what we did is my mother-in-law did take the kids at 1, and then sure enough, an hour after the kids being gone, they started coming back a little more frequently. And I think it's maybe because I wasn't in that mommy mindset where it was like kids, and a lot of distractions. Even though I really wanted my kids there, I think not having them there kind of helped. It helps you just relax a little more because there's not the constant chatter and noise. So somehow I think it helped my body to kind of just focus on the baby. So the contractions continued to be like 15 to 25 minutes apart, and they weren't strong. I mean, I got a few ones that, you know, I did breathe through and stuff like that, which was great. Well, I breathed through all of them, obviously, but I mean, I like had to stop and kind of relax into them because they were a little more fruitful than the other ones. And that's kind of how I viewed labor. And I'm going to actually make another video on how I did all natural unmedicated birth, because that could be a whole another long conversation. And this one's going to be long enough. So anyway, so I did breathe through those. We decided to go to Sprouts, which is a farmer's market here, and just grab some snacks, some drinks, and then go to Pita Jungle and pick up the chicken platter I wanted for dinner. I was like, I need something with protein, carbs, and yeah, like veggies, so I have a lot of fuel, because you're able to eat, if you have natural labor, you're able to eat throughout, which is very smart to do. You don't want to eat a huge meal, but I definitely wanted to get enough fuel because I wasn't sure how my labor was going to progress. And I did have some contractions in Sprouts when we got there, which was, I was like, oh, they're kind of picking up. And then I would just breathe in the aisles, and people were looking at me like, this lady's going to have the baby here. But I didn't. And then we left, we went to Pita Jungle, had like 1 or 2 in the car, came home, and we ate dinner. I ate a lot of dinner, actually. It was really garlicky. So I was like, ugh. And then I was like, let's go upstairs, watch some Office, and just lay around. Because my birthing coach said, yeah, lay around, my doula. And my doula was actually out of town, so I had to contact her so she can have her stand-in come. But my doula did call me. It was probably around 6 something. And she's like, just asking how the contractions were going. I was on the phone with her for probably 25 minutes, and I had about 3 of them. And one was like really short. So she was noticing that, she's like, I think you're gonna have this baby tonight. And I was like, I don't think so. They're so like, they're not really that strong. Like some are, some aren't. So they weren't consecutive at all. And they were pretty staggered. So she told me once I get to the 5-minute mark, because it's my 4th, she said, then you need to go to the hospital because it could go really fast from there. So, yeah, and they were pretty far apart at that point. So I hung up with her. She said, you're doing great. I'm glad I can hear you breathing through your contractions, cleansing breath in, and then when they end out. So, so we got off the phone, and literally 15 minutes later, they started picking up. And so it was so crazy. As soon as I got off the phone with her, I went to the bathroom, and every time I went pee, because my baby actually, when they checked me, like even being late, every time they checked me, they're like, she's in your pelvis. And she was very low from like 3 weeks out before I was even due. They said that her head was low, she was in position, looking great, facing my spine, and her head was right in my pelvis, which explains a lot of the pressure I had down there and having to go pee constant because she was just on my bladder. So every time I went pee, I had really strong contractions. So I was like, I gotta go pee. And then I promise it was like a strong contraction every time I went pee. It just brought on a contraction. I think it was just like the opening and just really fruitful contractions from going pee. So anyways, at that point, me and my husband started timing it, and probably at 5 or 6 minutes, or like 6 minutes, 7. And my husband, he actually noticed I was getting a little more serious and a little more into the contractions. And at that point, he was timing them, and he's like, okay, yeah, they're close now, so we need to go. And I was like, no way, they're not that close. Like, I was just in denial. I was like, they're not that close, and they're fine. And he's like, let's go. And I was like, let's just wait a little longer. So I kept pushing it, probably another 40 minutes. And then after I had another contraction in the bathroom again, I was like, yeah, let's go, because they're getting kind of stronger. And it wasn't scary or anything. They're just stronger, and you know that, yeah, labor is definitely in way. So he was like, I want to take a shower, maybe not the hospital. Should I take one here? He was a little more frazzled about it. And I was like, yeah, just take a shower here. I'll just be on the bed. I can do the contractions without you. And then we had to get an ice chest for my placenta, and I told him, he's like, should we go have someone bring the ice chest to the hospital? And I said, no. I said, we'll get it. There's one across the street from the hospital. So I felt like completely like sober-minded and like in control. It was crazy. So he took a shower, and I worked through some contractions, and then by the time he got out of the shower, packed up everything, I was kind of walking around. And with these contractions, usually I sway a lot, and I don't know if it's because she was in my pelvis, was more uncomfortable, but I kind of just rocked like back and forward. I used to sway a lot, like, well, I used to. In my other births, I swayed, and that felt like that brought the baby out. But this time I kind of just rocked back and forth and was a little more still during the contractions, which is different. That's why each labor is different. Each birth is different. You do what feels comfortable for you during your labor. So yeah, you're going to be given a lot of different advice for moms who haven't had babies or who are pregnant, but I'm telling you, go with how your body feels, because that is what's going to bring the baby down. I might have to make this into 2 videos. Still haven't figured out the timing, but if I stop this video, there's going to be a part 2. So anyways, we get in the car, and I have about 3 contractions on the way to the hospital. And so, is it still, okay. Okay, the time's good. So anyways, the hospital's about 10 minutes away, and we had to stop at the gas station. So I didn't have 3 in 10 minutes, it was longer than that. It was probably 3 in like 18 to 20 minutes. But yeah, they were pretty, 5 minutes apart around there. And so my husband gets in the car, and I'm like, I gotta go pee by the time we get to the hospital. And I was like, I just gotta get out of this car, because sitting down while you're having labor pains, like, your body doesn't want to be stagnant when it's like opening. It kind of just wants to move, or it just doesn't want to sit. It wants to be up. So he was like, do you want me to drop you off in the front of the hospital, the emergency room, so you could check in and then go pee? And I was like, no, just park. So we get out, we walk, he leaves his stuff there, and then we get in, and then we go right to like the sign in, and the lady's like, are you okay? And I was like, I was going through a contraction, and she was like, and I told her, I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. Where's the bathroom? She's like, you're not gonna push out the baby in there. And I was like, no, I just have to go pee. So I went potty, and there was like these 2 women that were like sitting, they were sitting next to the bathroom, and they must have, I don't know why they were there, like if they were waiting for someone, because they were very cheery for the emergency room. But they're like, you could do it, because they knew I was in labor, and I was like, thank you. So I went potty, came back, and then they admitted us down there, but then they said the triage to get checked and all that was on the 3rd floor. So they asked if I wanted a wheelchair, and I said no, because I don't want to sit. So we had to walk a long corridor all the way to the elevators on the other side. I did have a couple contractions, and I did cry in the corridor downstairs with a contraction, because it just hit me that we were in the hospital, and I was just, you get overwhelmed or nervous, and so my husband just held me and hugged me, and he was like, it's okay. He's like, it's all right, you've done great so far. And I'm like, I know, just really emotional. I was like, I just can't believe we're here, and crying and crying. And I got myself together, and then I was like, okay, let's go to triage. So we go upstairs after a good hug and a contraction, and then we get there, and they're kind of like, okay, go over here. And so I walk over, and then they get ready to check me, and they're like asking me all these questions, and between contractions, like fine, smiling, happy I was. So the lady's getting ready to check me. She puts on this stuff to check the baby's heart rate, and then she was getting ready to check me. I was like, oh, got a contraction. So I'm like on all fours on the table, kind of swaying back and forth, and she could see on the monitor. She's like, oh, that's a good contraction, wow. And I was like, okay. And then I lay down and she checks me. And usually I'm like 4 or 5 when I get to the hospital. So she's checking me and then she's like, okay, all right, okay. And it didn't hurt, which usually it does at a 4 or 5. And she's like, okay, you're an 8, mom, 8 centimeters. And I'm like, I look at my husband and I'm like, an 8? We're an 8? Like we birthed at home till 8? This is a miracle, thank God. So we're just looking at each other and I'm like, oh my goodness. And she's like, do you feel like you're gonna push? And I was like, no. But it's weird because I was like happy and smiling. The only hard part was like during the contractions. Obviously I wasn't smiling and talking, but like between them, fine. And then I was like, okay, but how much am I effaced? And she's like 100%. So I was just in shock. So behind the scenes, I guess my husband says they were like just clearing out the room as fast as they could and getting everything ready. The floors were wet when we went into the delivery room because of how fast they were trying to get people out. I guess it was the busiest weekend they've had. It was Labor Day weekend. So funny. They're like, everyone got the memo. They had like 50 something births in like 3 days, but we didn't know any of this. But I guess they were telling my husband, like, they were talking like, this baby might come out triage here. We got to get her to a room. And so they were kind of like hustling. So, and then my sister, she was coming and she texted my husband. She's like, hey, do you want a coffee? And he texted her back. He's like, she's at an 8. Like, no, come as soon as you can. And my sister got that. It was just like, oh my gosh. So my sister came into the triage where I was like getting evaluated and her hair was all curly and she had her coffee and she's like, oh my gosh, an 8. She was all shocked. So that was fun. And then the stand-in birthing coach lady did come, which was really nice. And so she was there as well, the doula. And yeah, me and my husband, it really felt like as soon as they got us in the room, I had continued to have some contractions. My husband went to go get the stuff. And at that point, my sister and the doula both were with me while I had, you know, some contractions while he was gone. And then when he came back, it was me and him basically again through the contractions. And I'm so thankful they were there even for like a few contractions where they really helped me through it. Because you just need that support. And this labor just felt me and my husband grew so much closer in a lot of ways. I don't know. I feel like this labor was me and him. I just think of it like that. And all the other births I've done, natural, unmedicated, I've always had a doula, but I always felt like it was me and the doula and like, you know, someone else, my sister or my friend who was there, a close friend. And this time it just really felt like me and him in a lot of ways. And I think it's because we labored so long at home and we were so relaxed about the whole thing. It was crazy. So about an hour after being in labor, my midwife came in, and another blessing, it was the midwife I would have chosen. There's like 4 or 5, and you don't know their schedule, but it was Beth, and Beth was like, I'm here. And I was like, oh my goodness, what a blessing. Like, God really answered my prayers on even that, because I wanted her there, and for her to be working that random, like that night, and I was 8 overdue, like you just can't plan that. Like only God could do that. I'm so thankful. So she was there and she's like, you're a rock star. I can't believe you came in smiling and happy. And I'm like thinking like, I can't believe me neither, because I've had 3 natural births and they have not gone like this. So another blessing I'm very thankful for. And I really do give the glory to God, because I've had other natural births that have gone, they went well, but just not like this one. I can't explain it. Just like the smiling, and even during transition, it's just crazy. Because if I look back, I did have transition at my house. I felt really nauseous when I was laying down having a contraction, and just really like sick and hot and nauseous. And I look back and I was like, I was probably going through transition and I did not even know it. I thought it was the dinner I ate, that big garlicky dinner, but it wasn't. It must have been transition. So about an hour anyways of being in the room, the midwife said, I'm not going to check you. If you need to push, just they'll come out and grab me. So they, yeah. So literally after she said that, she left the room. I had a contraction and I felt all the pressure, and I was like, I need to push, go get Beth. Oh, so they literally got Beth right after that happened. And it was amazing because she came in and I got on all 4s. My husband was sitting on the table like this, and I was holding on to him like this through each contraction, just my head in his chest and my butt. I was on all 4s. my butt in the air so they can grab the baby. And I remember they made me scoot forward because I was off the table too much. So yeah, they're like, scoot towards Rudy. So I scooted towards them and I was pushing. I felt her crown, which is like, it's just one of those moments where you're like, oh, I feel her head, and then you have to stop your contraction because it stops, and then you just feel her head sitting there, and I'm like, I just want it out. So I remembered what I've listened to in videos, and I haven't pushed this way with my other kids, which is crazy, I know. So if you are gonna give a natural birth, you have to watch my other video on some tips on how to give a natural birth, because I've had 3 natural and this one went the best. And yeah, some tips for that. But I pushed like I was going number 2, and I pushed her out in 10 minutes that way. And it was like amazing because her head went back, I remember. And then like I keep pushing, and at first her head was like, when I pushed, she was like, I don't see her head. Do you want me to film there? And I was like, no. And then once I started pushing like that, she's like, okay, there's her head, there's her head. So that's when I was crowning, and then a few more contractions like that. And then all of a sudden when I pushed like towards the last couple of pushes, I felt her head, like I just felt it coming out. And then they were like, okay, like everyone gets excited in the room, and like I love that because that means like her head's right there and she's so close. So I feel her like coming out, and then as I'm like pushing her head out like as hard as I can, and I could just like feel it, my doctor says, okay, stop, 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 which usually means the body's coming out and you don't want to like push out the body as hard as you can. So I remember as soon as she said stop, if your doctor ever tells you to stop while you're pushing, I took a deep breath in, and she like slid out because your body will naturally bring out the baby. And then she was like, oh, great, great, great. And I felt her body come out, and it felt so long. She was 21 inches, and I like felt her whole body come out, which is a relief. It sounds weird, but it feels amazing just to have her come out, because that's like not the painful part. It just feels like a release. And she was out, and I rolled to my side, and they handed her to me. My sister recorded it, and I watched it later. Beautiful. My daughter was crying, and I started crying because it's so beautiful. I just, yeah, I held her, and my husband was behind me, and it was just an absolutely gorgeous moment that I will share in my mind and in my heart, and with anyone willing to listen. It was just absolutely beautiful. Yeah, and then after that, after I pushed her out, I sat with her. Her cord was short, so she was kind of like right here, like on my stomach, but they didn't want me to bring her up too high because she had a short cord. And we were waiting for the placenta to come out so she could nurse, but she was just on my stomach kind of crying for a little while until it was ready. And then once the placenta came out, I was able to nurse her and look at her, and she was so gorgeous, ton of hair, beautiful. I call her my little Chicana baby because she, yeah, she looks very Hispanic, which, yeah, a lot of my other kids did too, but she definitely did. And I was like, oh, she has an ethnic look to her. Love it. So, and here she is. She knows that's her cue. So anyways, let me introduce you, and then I will talk about the rest of the story. This is her name. I know I was stressed about her name. Her name is Victoria Claire, is what we decided to name her. And we didn't name her right away. It took like a little while to name her, because I was still asking, like, even the natal nurse. I was like, what do you like? I was asking everybody. But then I was like, you know what? Victoria Claire just kept standing out in my brain. I just wanted to make sure. It's just their name's so permanent, and I love the name Victoria Claire. Absolutely love it. But I was just like, am I for sure? Do I want it to be Natalie? Do I want it to be? And I looked at her, and Victoria, oh sweetie, it means victory, and then Claire means like clear or bright, and I was like, that's her. She's a clear victory of ours, and it's beautiful. So yeah, and it's a strong name, so I'm very happy we chose that. My husband, I told him in the room, I said, this is my gift to you, honey, that we're naming her Victoria, because you said that was the most beautiful name ever. And so yeah, that is what we named her. And so little Victoria Claire. And let's see. Oh, so okay, this video is, yeah, it's getting a little long, so I will finish up. I had some postpartum bleeding, and so they gave me a shot of Pitocin, which I did have with Sophia as well, which contracts the uterus, because my uterus gets a little lazy after the birth of Sophia, which is my third, and as well Victoria too. So, and that just means it's not shrinking and you can bleed a lot. So yeah, every time they checked me I was bleeding a lot, so they gave me the shot. And then that did not work, so they gave me an option of a drip of Pitocin, which can slow down your milk coming in, or pills rectally. And we opted for the 5 rectal pills, which actually wasn't horrible because of all that was going on down there. There's like all this pressure and all this other stuff, so it was pretty quick and painless. And it did slow down the bleeding, which was great. The only bad part, I guess, was the nurse was in there from like since I had her to like 2 in the morning, like pushing on my uterus every 15 minutes, which is crampy and not very comfortable. But Victoria did nurse from like when I had her, like after my placenta came, and she was able to move from her little short umbilical cord, and we let it stop pulsating, which is great because that means all the blood got back to her. And she nursed from that time, probably like 10:40, 10:30 to like 2 something in the morning. She was nursing forever. So we had a lot of kangaroo care, and she was just, yeah, she was nursing and relaxing on my chest for a long time, and it was amazing. So I am so happy I got to share this with you. I love birthing stories. I was like obsessed with watching them when I was pregnant, and I'm so happy that I got to share it with you. Sorry you only briefly got to see Victoria. She is eating again, because that's what little infants do. They eat and they poop and they cry and they snuggle with their mommy, and it's the best. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll show you her little body, but cover my woman's parts. This is her. She's so sweet. Well, I guess you can only see my bra, but I will have more videos with her in it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions, please comment, or any beautiful birthing story or parts or anything that you guys wanted to share. I would love to hear it. And I will talk to you later. Bye.